part of meeting patients where they are is making sure that you can have this sort of frictionless interaction. So if you can digitize scheduling, that's a huge one. Form intake, which is always tricky. But again, there's software platforms where you can actually send out a digitized form, patient fills it out, comes back, and then if it integrates into the EHR correctly, it goes right into their chart. Anytime that you can automate some sort of like no-show or retrieval text, things like that to get people back in, all of that helps you attract and retain more patients. You gotta make it easy, because if it's confusing, you've already lost the patient. I mean, I can just run through it like that. You guys can see that, right? If I go that way? Yeah? All right, well, that's just a picture of me, so nobody needs to see that anyway. So, you just look right here. Hi. All right, yeah, so I'm Corey. I'm the VP of Insight Marketing Group. I co-host the DrMarketingTips Show along with our president, Jennifer Thompson. Co-written a couple of marketing books. They're on Amazon. Don't look at those. They're old, so the information's very outdated. But they're there, so that's a thing that I did. Also sit on a couple of MGMA boards, and I've been doing this for the better part of, I think I'm on like year 16, 17 now. So what I want to do is kind of talk through the 5 marketing strategies for your practice. So we're going to cover your reputation, meeting patients where they are, how to retrain and train your team, social video, and then leveraging AI. So that was my talk. Those are the 5 tips. Thank you. It's been fun. I built that in just in case there was some sort of technical difficulty, so I'm glad that that happened. All right. Okay, so let's actually talk through these things. So first thing I want to do is go through a couple of details just to kind of set the stage for what we're talking about and why these things kind of matter. So I got a couple stats in here from a Press Ganey survey, and then again, just from sort of experience knowing how this stuff works. So, that's my daughter. She turns 1 in 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm biased, but she's kind of the best. So she's going to make a couple of appearances throughout this thing. All right, so we know that patients rely more and more on the digital experience more than they ever have before. So they're choosing where they are going for their healthcare 2.2 times more than they used to on a digital front. I'm sure you guys already know that, so not telling you anything that's too new here. Patients look at a couple different online sources before they actually make their decision. So typically they're going to look at a couple of different sources, and then they're going to look at multiple reviews on those platforms. Ratings are number 1 factor, and if you can't book digitally, a majority of patients will just sort of move on. So obviously since 2019, there's been a huge increase in telemedicine. We know that quality of customer service is a number 1 factor in earning a 5-star visit. And again, that's usually not related to the physician or the provider at all. That's usually the 5 stars come in typically when, or less than 5 stars typically comes in when staff has some sort of issue, billing, front desk, et cetera. I thought this one was really interesting. So 84% would not see a referred provider if they had less than a 4-star rating. So, and what we're finding now is a lot of people know how important ratings are. So everybody has a ton of 5-star reviews. So what is really going to separate your practice? Because a couple of years ago, you could have 100 and your competitor down the street would have 25. So that's easy. But now everyone has so many reviews, especially at their main office location. So if you have 500, somebody else has 450, what's the difference there? So we'll talk about that. So now what? So when we're talking about reputation, we need to make sure that we're controlling the conversation. And we know that the following factors really influence patient decisions. So one is, again, positive online reputation, relevant information, the ability to schedule online, the availability of reviews, and the ability to private message a healthcare provider. How many of you guys have that right now where there's like a mobile application or something where a patient can contact you? I see a couple hands. Okay. If your practice has more listings, higher reviews, you're going to make more money. That's simple math. And again, I think we all know those things, but I just wanted to say that it still matters, but the conversation has shifted a little bit. So Google considers over 200 different things when they're coming up with their search algorithm. Number 1 is going to be the number of reviews for your business. So if you have more, Google factors that in. How often a review is submitted. So if you got a whole bunch and then you turned it off and you don't really focus on it anymore, that actually does impact your SEO rating. The number of websites where your business has reviews. So there's some software providers out there where they will, you can submit one review and they're gonna share that to 15 to 20 different websites. That's one way that you can sort of take advantage of this particular piece of the algorithm. And again, the quality of the person that's leaving the review. We see this all the time with places like Yelp. So if you don't typically, if you get a review on Yelp, but you never leave reviews there normally, Yelp will just hide those. But if you get a review from someone who is very active on Yelp, then that will show up. So beyond receiving excellent care, we know that, again, these things matter when it comes to 5-star reviews. I can send you these slides. I've got a QR code at the end if anybody's interested in that. And then also, I believe Lisa said that these slides are on the website too. So I'm not gonna go through that because I do want to cover some of the other stuff. So what should you do? You gotta provide the excellent care. You have to claim and regularly monitor your listings. And that's one where I think a lot of people get tripped up because you may claim your business listing and then you don't ever go back to it. And we recommend that you, in fact, every couple of months, just go take a look because we've had multiple instances with practices that we work with where, for example, the listing has been updated. They'll change like it'll get refreshed from the MPI database. All of a sudden the phone number is different. So that happened actually with an orthopedic practice that we worked with. And they wound up changing, I think it was on health grades, they changed the phone number to the hospital phone number from the practice. So it matters. Go ahead and take an audit every now and then for that. Respond to negative reviews. So if you're not doing that, that's one that people miss, especially if there's an issue. So we work with an ENT practice and they had an issue for a long time where they just couldn't answer the phones. They just could not hire enough people to answer the phones. And they got so many negative reviews about it, they just sort of buried their head in the sand and said, I'm not even gonna bother. Obviously that's not best practices. And do not gate reviews. So gating reviews is when you send out a survey and if someone says that it's 5 stars, you ask them to go ahead and put that on Google. If it's less than that, you try and keep that internal. That's a common practice with different review providers. If Google finds out about that, they'll just wipe out all of your reviews. So yeah, you're not actually, according to their terms of service, you're not allowed to do that. Next tip, meet patients where they are, even if they're lost. So what I mean by that is, we just talked a lot about some of the different stats and where people are finding your practice, how they're interacting with them. What we recommend is trying to really own that first page of Google. So that's your organic listings, that's Google ads, that's claiming your Google business listings off to the side there. As much of that real estate that you can own, that basically means a competitor can't own that space. So the more that you have, the better off you're gonna be. It also, again, makes sense to do an audit of your listings on the various review sites, insurance websites, if you get posted on, like a local community site, all of those things. That all just sort of helps get the name out there. And then I asked a question a couple minutes ago about how many people have some sort of texting or private messaging solution. And so part of meeting patients where they are is making sure that you can have this sort of frictionless interaction. So if you can digitize scheduling, that's a huge one. Form intake, which is always tricky. But again, there's software platforms where you can actually send out a digitized form, patient fills it out, comes back, and then if it integrates into the EHR correctly, it goes right into their chart. Anytime that you can automate some sort of like no-show or retrieval text, things like that to get people back in, all of that helps you attract and retain more patients. But you gotta make it easy because if it's confusing, you've already lost the patient. So where are your patients? They're searching. A properly optimized Google business listing will generate money for you, hands down. It's passive, it's easy, and when you have it, and it's working right. We just did a case study a couple months ago where we found that we were able to convert new patients at a rate of just over 11% with an estimated revenue of $245,000 for an orthopedic practice over the course of, what was that, 3 months?
Yeah, 3 months.
3 months. So, yeah. Into surgeries, correct. Yeah, so not just new patients, but there was a conversion rate on the surgeries. So Google listings really matter. They are free. And every, I don't know, 6 months or so, they roll out new features. So a couple years ago, for instance, you could not list what insurances you accept on your Google Business listing. You can now do that. If it integrates with your EHR, you can also put a schedule appointment button on your Google listing. People can click that and then book. So there's a couple different things that you can do to really optimize those. And you can do those for providers and locations. Where else are your patients? They're watching video. So I got a bunch of stats on here, but really what they all say is that people are watching videos. So what should you do? You gotta have a good website. You should really be accepting appointments online, or at the very least, appointment requests. Be ready to chat with them. Offer some type of chat solution, and then use the written word to be found. So that's sort of your content strategy. That can be your long form sort of SEO stuff. And then use videos to actually be heard, because that's how a lot of patients are going to want to consume the content. But you're going to get found from an organic search side through the written stuff. Whoops, there's a baby again. Thank you. I know, I don't know where she gets it from, honestly. Okay, so what else matters? Training and retraining your team. So there's been a lot of talks during this session, or during this conference, and again, we all know this stuff. You know, your team experience really matters. If you have a higher rating, you're gonna make more. If you have more reviews, you're going to make more, and you're gonna have a better patient experience. A lot of times, the provider is not the problem. So if provider scores are good, the staff will pull down sort of that net promoter average. And usually, again, sometimes that can be related to access or some type of billing, but for the most part, it's gonna be a non-clinical staff member that tanks those averages. So a couple things that you can do there to help sort of course correct is educating the team, making sure that you're investing in the development of employees so that way you can actually keep them. Over communicate. That's one thing that I deal with constantly when we're sort of looking at the internal communication strategy for a lot of practices. They don't communicate their message enough internally. So for example, if you have a new policy that's going to roll out, put it everywhere you can. You know, have it during your weekly staff meetings, put posters in the break rooms. If you have video capabilities in your break rooms, have a video loop that has it on there, put it on the intranet, send an email, carrier pigeon, whatever. Just make sure that the message gets out multiple times in multiple ways. Because again, we all know how it goes day to day. Especially on the clinical side, provider comes in, does what they're supposed to do, they dictate, take their notes, whatever, and then they're on to the next patient, and so it's really hard to get those messages there. But they're not the only person that matters. They're not the only audience that matters. So make sure that, you know, in whatever way possible, you're spreading that message. So again, employee experience is important because 92% of candidates would consider leaving their current job if offered another role with the company that had an excellent reputation. So we talked a lot about the patient side of things, but this matters just as much for employees. So that's really what I want to drive home with this tip is that what you're doing internally, it creates a better culture, and then from that you're able to build a better patient experience, and then everything, you know, sort of improves and rises from there. So what should you do? Educate, share, over-communicate, which is a word. I don't know why I've got that red line there. Don't rely on initial onboarding because when you onboard them the first time, you know, maybe the person that's doing your onboarding, they had a bad day or they forgot something. It's really important, and something that we stress all the time is to have some sort of continuing education or onboarding or training platform that you can really hammer home your ideas and your concepts to employees. So an example of that would be, you know, you have new hire onboarding. They come in, you go through the handbook a little bit. And then that's kind of it. Maybe they have to sign something that says that they read the handbook and they paid attention to it. But you can supplement that with online training. And then with that training, you can make sure that maybe there's a video that goes with that. Maybe it's a message from your CEO. You can then explain different pieces and highlights of the handbook. They have to complete a little quiz. Great. Then you have on record that they actually participated and engaged with this handbook. Pay attention to what employees are saying about you. So that's Glassdoor, Indeed, all those type of places. So just like you got to monitor your reputation on Google and Health Grades, you got to do it over there too, because there's some really great insights that can come out of those hiring platforms. And just like regular review sites, you can choose to kind of bury your head in the sand, or you can actually take a look at those and try and make some improvements from there. And then of course make the changes once you get the feedback. So employee surveys are really powerful too. I noticed that a lot of the bigger organizations that we work with, they're pretty good about it. A lot of the smaller practices, they don't do that as regularly. So that's something that I think that could be a takeaway from this, is just to do employee surveys if you are not currently doing those. Okay, so I mentioned video earlier, and specifically social video is where you're going to have the most engagement, you're going to make the most headway. So 66% of consumers find short form videos to be the most engaging type of content on social media. So what we do, and I think something that you guys can walk out of here and really just start on Monday, is sit down with a provider. And again, the quality of the video does not matter as much as the quality of the content itself. So you could do this with an iPhone. Sit down with a provider and just run through some Q&As. So then you can take that video, you can put that on YouTube, you can cut it up and put it on Instagram Reels, on TikTok, and kind of meet your patients where they are. And then take that content, so you've got a video now, you can turn each one of those questions into a piece of long form content that can go back on your website. So again, kind of circling back to what I said earlier, long form content will get you found on the search engines. Somebody goes to the page, they can then engage and watch the video. They can get a little preview of what their provider is going to look like, sound like, feel like, et cetera. And then you can use that in a bunch of different places. And again, some of these stats here, 93% of companies have acquired new customers via social media video. We know that, we've been doing this for videos for what, like 10 years, 12 years, something like that. Whenever we do patient testimonials, the providers will come to us and say that people will go into the office and say they chose them because of whatever the patient testimonial is. So it's very powerful because the patient can kind of see themselves in that video. You can go with an all-out production, but you don't need to. It could be as simple as an iPhone, and you can keep it short and sweet. You can ask the patient for a couple of photos, if they can, like for example, if you're an orthopedic practice, they can get back to, I don't know, mountain biking, and they couldn't do that before. Now they have a new knee, they're doing it again, send a video or a photo of that, and then you've got a great piece of content that you can use multiple ways in multiple different mediums. So what should you be posting? There's a list there. These are some of the most effective things that we find doing this every day. Testimonials, Q&As, those are super easy. If you have a new location opening up, it's great to do sort of like a walkthrough of that office. If you have a new product or a service, so let's say you're a med spa or dermatology office, something like that. If you got something new, get somebody on camera talking about it. Staff gathering. So if you are doing something as a team in your community, that's a fantastic thing to take a video of and post about it, because if there's no video, there's no photos, it didn't really happen. Day in the life clips. So that's the idea of taking, we just did this recently for a surgeon. So we actually had him submit clips throughout his day. So he woke up at 4 a.m., went to the gym, then he went and saw patients, then he had surgery, then he went to like his kid's soccer game, and we just take clips of that, put it all together. And the engagement that we saw on that was through the roof. Before and after clips, if that makes sense for whatever your specialty is. And then, one that's new on here is partnering with local influencers. So there's services where you can partner with a local social media influencer that's in your community. You have to vet those because some are going to be better than others. But that is a great way to increase your following, get a lot of engagement, and you don't really have to lift a finger other than signing the agreement and having the initial meeting with the influencer. You kind of got to let them sort of come up with whatever plan that they want to do, because it's their following that you're just kind of hooking into, you're connecting with. So give them the freedom to do what they do best, let them be creative. But it's great because it's passive and you don't really have to do a lot, you just sort of reap the benefits of that. Like if you asked me this last year, I would have said you should be on, yes, the social platforms, but you want to be in the feed. People don't really look at the feed anymore. They don't really make it past the top of whatever the social media platform is. So whether that's Reels, Stories, whatever, even YouTube now is starting to load into Shorts specifically. So that's where you should be. 60 seconds or less is the magic number there. It's honestly probably 30 seconds or less. Couple tips to help a video perform. If you're doing something on Reels or on TikTok, you can just take popular music clips and use that. You'll get a ton of benefit from doing that. If someone leaves a comment, engage right away. And you should not repost from other networks. So you can use the same video across other networks, but you shouldn't, for example, not here, so I can say this. This is an Instagram post, but you can see that on the bottom right, it's from TikTok, and he just took it and put it on Instagram. And that actually, when you do that, the meta algorithms, specifically on Instagram, they frown on that. So you'll get dinged if you're reposting content specifically from a different platform. So what can you do? I would suggest coming up with an editorial calendar and planning to just get started. I mean, that's half the battle. And then once you know what content kind of resonates with the audience, you can adjust from there. So if testimonials work, lean into that. If Q&As work, lean into that. I've got on here measure progress. And what I mean by that is you can see how long people are watching the videos. So again, it's another way to measure how engaging they are. You want to know where people are getting to in the videos, because then if you're going to start editing, you can move messages around. So for example, we know that for some of the providers that we work with, there's a plateau around the 12-second mark, and then people fall off. So if we're doing like a YouTube short, we know we've got, within that 12 seconds to really get our message across that, this procedure changed my life, and now I can X. So we want to start with that rather than intros of the doctor or the office or whatever, and we'll include those if we have time, but we want that key benefit up front. And again, don't worry about the quality too much. If it's good enough, do it. So AI. Should we be afraid of it? Maybe. Are we? I mean, not really. We use it constantly in our business. We have heavily leaned into AI to create content. And is it perfect? No, but it does give us a fantastic jumping off point. Okay, so I asked ChatGPT to tell me what it is. And essentially, it gave me the answer that it is generative AI, which means that you can put in a prompt, you get something back. There's a bunch of these that have proliferated over the past couple of months. ChatGPT is one of the most famous, but it is certainly not the only one. I have a list in a second of my 5 favorite that we use. So how can you use it? So here I gave it a very specific prompt. I said, I run a dermatology practice in Orlando. It's almost July, so it's going to be really sunny. I want a 500-word blog post about the dangers of the sun with some bulleted list and basically some social. The name of the practice is Skynet Dermatology, and I'd like the first few sentences of the article to say that, essentially. So that was my prompt. So there's my blog post. Is it perfect? No. Does it require tweaking? Absolutely. It's very superfluous, we found. It throws in a lot of adjectives, and it tries a little too hard sometimes, and it's not 100% clear, but again, just this outline saves somebody probably an hour. And then, so after that, I got my article, and I said, okay, this is pretty good, so now I want to do something else with this. So I probably need some social posts, and then some emails would be great. And so I went back down there and I said, okay, So next step, write me 3 emails that I can send out with a special offer. Same thing. And I got my 3 emails, took those, edited them, and then I have essentially a full campaign for the summer, like that. Comes with my emojis and everything. It's fantastic. So a couple things to note, specifically about ChatGPT is the learning model only goes until 2021. So if you ask it anything after 2021, it does not know the answer. So if you said, does Elon Musk own Twitter? It would tell you no. And then if you wanted to get in a fight with it, it would fight you back and say, no, you're wrong. And it also, if it doesn't know the answers to things, it just makes them up. So that's where it gets very tricky. I don't know if you guys saw this recent headline about the lawyer who went to trial with facts from ChatGPT, and he went back to it and he said, cite your sources, like, are these real? It said yes. He went to trial. They were all fake. It just totally made them up. So again, there's concerns, but it is a very helpful tool. And I think was this last week or just a couple of days ago, the AMA delegates had a special meeting where they called for more oversight of AI, specifically to how it relates to medical providers. Because one thing that they're getting ready to roll out with AI is cross EHR communication. So, and again, it can be very tricky because it produces results so quickly. And so the idea would be, okay, you have a patient that's on, like XScribe, and they're going to move over to ModMed or whatever the case may be. If it can't figure out all the information, the models currently just make it up. So it's murky, but there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. So I've got another list here for you. These are things that it can be used for. Just a couple ideas to kind of get you started with it. So blog content, we kind of covered there. Image creation, so ChatGPT doesn't do that, but there are other tools. So one is called Midjourney. Has anybody ever messed around with Midjourney? One in the back there? So this is a image, or 4 images actually, that I produced on Midjourney in about 8 seconds. I said, I want a picture of a doctor being taken over by AI in a Pixar-style frame. And then those are my 4 options. So again, very powerful stuff and very quick turnaround. So you can use that for social media posts. You can use that for your blog posts and what have you. Emails we talked about. You can ask it specific market research questions. Again, I would just check the facts on that. Strategic planning. So if you want to say, what are 10 things that I need to be concerned with for a vascular practice? And then it'll kind of spit those out for you. If you want to start doing video, ChatGPT makes it incredibly easy to do YouTube video scripts and descriptions. So you can just ask it for that specifically. Say I'm trying to put together a series of 35-second videos. They should be from I'll use vascular again. They should be from a vascular provider, and they should cover the most commonly asked questions. It'll spit those out. You can have the doctor review it, and then you basically got a script. You're ready to go. There's also tools where you can automatically transcribe things and translate things. So big fan of that. So you can transcribe meetings so you don't have to take the notes. You can then ask it for whatever the key points are, and it'll spit that back out for you. And then you can also translate. So if you need to, like, for example, get out a flyer really quick in Spanish, and you don't have anybody on the team that can write in Spanish, you can use ChatGPT. Again, I just would have someone read it over, but you can do it. Where it becomes really powerful is in the prompts. So I put 12 of the ones that I think make a lot of sense. And again, I can send these to anybody that wants them. I'm not going to read through all those, but it gives you an idea of some of the different things that you can do, the different ways that you can actually use ChatGPT. And then 5 tools. So talked a lot about ChatGPT. That's a favorite of mine. Midjourney is the image creator. SoundDraw is a specific audio AI. So if you need or want original audio for a video that you're working on, you can go to SoundDraw. It will produce something that's original. You just kind of tell it the tone and the style and how long you want the song to be. It spits it out. You can just pop it on the back of your video. Otter is one of the note-taking tools that I mentioned. So that it actually plugs into, as of right now, it'll plug into Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, I believe, as well. And it'll record the meeting, send a transcription, and then summarize sort of the key takeaways and just send you an email with a couple of bullets. And then Rev is one where you can transcribe videos. There's two versions of Rev. One version actually has human power behind it as well. It costs a little bit more. I think it's like $1.29 per minute or so for the human one. If you're doing just AI, it's like 59 cents or something. But it will transcribe video, and the human one at least is like 99% accurate. The AI only is about 90% accurate. But great way to use all these tools together is if you have a piece of content, maybe your doctor sits down, does a video, use SoundDraw to put the audio behind that, use Rev, then you can get the transcript out of that, go to ChatGPT and say, reword this into a 500-word blog post. Then you have an original piece of content, you've got your video, and you can do all that in, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. And you can come up with a whole content calendar like that. So yeah, if you want to kind of take the bull by the horns, it's definitely possible with AI, and it's easier than it ever has been, but it is not automatic, and it is not 100% accurate. So those are the 5 strategies for your practice. There's another cute baby. And if you scan that, that's my email, and I will send you these slides. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, since we have time, does anybody have any questions?
Canva has added some AI tools that are super.
The last couple of months, yeah.
Yeah, so if you haven't been in Canva lately, go mess around in there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so not only have they added AI, but they've also, again, if you looked at Canva, I don't know, a year ago, 16 months ago, they have so many more templates now than they did. It's insane. So if you needed a very specific flyer, odds are it's either in Canva or you can use their AI to help you create something. Go ahead, Trey.
Can you give us a couple examples of practices that you feel are doing this right that we can kind of look at and emulate?
Yeah, so we use it for all of the practices that, not all, but a lot of the practices that we work with. So I mean, the hospitals are also really getting into it. The hospitals do a good job because they have sort of like the manpower behind it. Again, not all the hospitals, not all the groups, but it depends. So I don't want to give you a specific name, but yeah, there are a bunch out there. We can talk about that.
For not being able to use the popular music clips for copyright reasons.
Right.
So is that an issue, or has there been any movement on that?
It depends on where you're using it and how you're going to use it. So for example, like when you go to create the video, so on TikTok, for example, there's a library that you can choose from. But now let's say you wanted to take that video and then go and just download it and put it on YouTube Shorts as an example. That's where you run into the copyright issues, because what will happen is YouTube will just silence the video because you don't own the rights to that on their platform. So they'll still let you post it, but there won't be any sound.
Do you also monetize the videos on TikTok, or does that affect the copyright?
It can. If you're a medical practice, so you probably don't want to monetize the video, but yeah.
Can you provide us top marketing strategies that don't work?
That don't work? Yeah. So advertising on social is one that you have to be very specific in what you're trying to accomplish there, and know that you're probably not going to get a ton of conversions. So for example, like if you wanted to promote something, even if it was like a job listing on LinkedIn, you're going to spend a lot of money and you're not going to reach a lot of people. With Meta, they have recently started to do, and they won't say officially, but there's been some change in the way that they review ads. And so, for example, we have done some vein care ads for a practice, totally fine, and all of a sudden, all of them were denied. And Meta said that it had something to do with the name, because in the name of the practice was a location. So what they were trying to say was that we were targeting a specific area and saying that area had vein problems. And so they just basically shut the account down. So I would say be very careful with social ads. And then anything that's sort of like a guaranteed SEO boost that you can get like overnight, I wouldn't trust that. because SEO is really sort of it's a marathon more than a sprint. It's a long-term thing. So if somebody is promising sustainable results and they can do that in like less than 30 days, I would say that they are probably rigging the system and they're going to get caught. Then you'll
Paid Google ads.
yeah, yep, yeah. So keyword stuffing, don't do that, which is basically just, so if you put a page together and then you want it to focus on, I don't know, ankle surgery, don't just stuff it with the term ankle surgery. But if you have really good content that focuses on ankle surgery, that piece is probably still going to do really well for you. And then when you're doing Google Ads, again, just make sure that you've got the right type of offer or landing page. So typically with Google Ads, you're going to want to focus on something where people can either download something right away, like some sort of ebook, infographic, something like that, or book an appointment right away. If you're just sending someone to a location page because you wanted to do Google Ads and don't really have a plan for what happens when they go to this new office page, other than looking at the front of the building, don't do that.
Do you have any current information as to how that's shifting in the older generations? Are they using, social media and Google and things?
Yes, they are. I don't have specific numbers in front of me, but yeah, they are.
What I saw was mostly Facebook.
Yeah. So for the older demographic like that, if you're going to be on social media, definitely Facebook is the right place to be. But from an online standpoint, you're going to want to do the same things that we talked about in terms of the Google business listings. If you're going to spend money to advertise, consider advertising on Bing rather than Google, because on PCs, the default browser is Microsoft Edge. And so if they're older, they're not going to download Chrome or Firefox really and change something. So they're just going to open up Bing and start typing something. So you want to be there. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? No? Awesome. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
If you want more like this, hit like and subscribe so you'll always be alerted to new episodes when they come out. And if you want information about us, visit us over at insightmg.com.